my name is Nadia Ghosheh, and I am the VJCL Academics Chair. And I'm bringing a lot of new changes to the academics world for Virginia Convention this year. And so I thought it'd be nice to make a video and talk about some of the reasons we made the decisions and explore them a little bit. Um, just so you can meet me for a second, I've been in Virginia JCL for about 20 years since I was in high school. Seen a lot happen since then. And I'm currently teaching at Hayfield Secondary School, which is in Fairfax County. It's a public school. So I know the challenges of big classrooms. And I've also had the honor of being one of the coaches to coach the Virginia teams at nationals the past 5 years. And so I also get to see the super competitive side too, which is super cool. And I'm now going to introduce my husband, who I dragged into making this video with me and who's been to fewer conventions than me. So, ta-da.
It might be fewer conventions, but I definitely started earlier than you did.
Okay, so older and less wise. I see how it goes.
2003, here we go. Um, I am Kevin Jefferson. I teach Latin at St. Stephen's and St. Agnes School in Alexandria. Um, I have also coached at the national level some of our Virginia state teams, um, particularly the intermediate team over the past couple of years. Um, In addition to doing that, I also in the fall serve as the Creative Arts Chair at VJCL Convention. And so I oversee things like dramatic interpretation and Latin oratory and storytelling, etc. So I'll try to chime in with some things on that front as we have this conversation tonight. Um, and I'll also try to pose a couple of questions to let our expert co-chair for academics share this wonderful new system that she's developed. So let's start off with that. Can you describe to us these 6 levels that we have starting this year?
Yeah, so I sort of took the Kurtaman idea of novice, intermediate, and advanced, and I just sort of broke them out. So we now have novice, novice plus, intermediate, intermediate plus, advanced, and advanced plus. And so instead of doing years of Latin, I realized that years in Loudoun County, in Fairfax County, at my husband's private school, at other private schools, the years do not mean the same across the state of Virginia. So instead of doing years, we're going to go by this new system: novice, novice plus, intermediate, intermediate plus, advanced, advanced plus. Do keep in mind that if your kids attend NJCL convention over the summer, they will still need to register by year of Latin. So NJCL rules are still staying the same. They're going to be by years. For us, we are changing to this new system to make things more equal, make things more fair, make things more accessible for kids in Virginia. So novice is really that same. You've only had 3 months of Latin, only a few things on that test. Novice plus, we're flushing it out. We're doing all 5 cases. We're adding in more verb tenses, but we're still sort of staying in maybe what we might call a traditional level 1 curriculum, or for multiple years of level 1 that might happen in middle schools. Intermediate, we start adding things like pronouns, a little bit of passive voice, but we're doing less passive voice than in previous years, recognizing that textbooks have changed. Intermediate plus is for any students who are starting their full year of complex syntactical structures, whether that's subjunctives, indirect statement, deponents, ablative absolutes. Any of those kids who are learning complex grammatical structures beyond just the indicatives should be going into intermediate plus. Advanced is for those kids who are done with all the complex structures that are found in textbooks and are reading authentic literature for their first year. It's fine if they're in AP, IB, DE, level 4, level 5, whatever fits your program, your curriculum, that goes to advanced. And then advanced plus is for kids in their second year of authentic literature, and also those kids who want to go for the Maureen O'Donnell Advanced Grammar Test Award and who want to read all of the Alan Greeno footnotes like I do, because that's my favorite thing in life, other than my cats.
Nerd.
And my husband. And my husband.
Me too. Me too.
Oh, Alan Greeno is your favorite thing too, more than yourself?
Oh, absolutely. Um, So I think one helpful thing to talk about here for us is how we're going to apply these levels to our own programs. Um, and so I'll kick it off, and Nadia, you can contribute too. Um, so for my program, we take eighth graders through 12th graders to convention. Our eighth graders are doing in class what you might call a 1B curriculum, second half of Latin 1, perhaps. We're going to enroll those eighth graders in the Novice Plus level. But students who start taking Latin at our high school, um, they will have seen Latin for only 3 months or so before coming to convention, and so they are going to be enrolled in Novice. Um, my level twos will be intermediate. My threes will be intermediate plus because they're learning subjunctives that year. My fours are a pre-AP year. They're reading authentic literature. My fours are going to be advanced, and my AP students are going to be advanced plus. Um, how is it going to look at Hayfield?
So yeah, my level ones will be and for Hayfield level one could be seventh grade, it could be ninth grade. They all do the same curriculum. But my level ones will be novice regardless. My level twos this year will be intermediate, although next year Fairfax is moving to Cambridge Green Book for our level two year. So I think that might end up changing next year. I'll have to see how it plays out in reality, but next year we might end up doing intermediate plus for our level two. And then this year my level threes will be intermediate plus. Most of my kids who are doing AP this year are in their first full year of authentic Latin. I do have some who are not, but for the most part, those are first full year. So those kids will be in advanced this year. And then I'll have a couple kids who are going to want to try for the Marina O'Donnell Award, and they'll be in advanced plus.
I feel like the other great tip for teachers who are trying to figure out where to place their students is that we have these coordinated levels with the National Latin Exam. Is that correct?
Yes. So I did take a look at the National Latin Exam syllabus and I more or less matched each of my levels to the National Latin Exam test that would make the most sense for them in March. I intentionally paired ones where there would still be a little bit left over for them to do in November through March. And I even slightly adjusted some of the syllabi so that they would pair even nicer with the National Latin Exam. I know more people in Virginia do NLE than NJCL. And so if you look at the very top of each of the levels, it has the recommended level for your students based on the NLE test they'll take in the spring. So that's a very little handy thing that I'm glad I came up with.
That will be so useful.
Yeah.
Um, how did we land at this new system? The old system had us reporting the students' levels of Latin. If they're level one, level two, level three, level four, then they should be taking certain tests. And their awards will come across as level one, level two, etc., by the numerical value. But this is more descriptive. So how did we land here? What was the impetus for making the change?
At some point, it just dawned on me that we were trying to make all of these different curricula, all of these different programs, all of these different experiences students get from different counties and NJCL experience, etc., fit into this like box that it just was not going to fit into. And so I had to, yeah, think outside the box per se. Right? Look at that. And realize that the system was broke and we did need to fix it. And sometimes we were looking at kids going into intermediate who didn't know the genitive case because they were, for example, doing Cambridge Blue Book going into intermediate. And sometimes we had kids coming out of NJCL summer who already knew passive voice, all the pronouns, all the participles, because that's what NJCL expects of them. And they're also going into intermediate. And that was just not a fair system. There's no way that's accessible and equitable for everybody. So we got here by looking at the NJCL syllabus, looking at what various pacing that counties and private schools are doing, and trying to find a system that was more descriptive of what Virginia was doing rather than the prescriptive old ways of this is what a year one is. Well, that means nothing anymore, right? At least not in Virginia.
Right. And every school interprets level one, level two
Yeah.
differently. Um, and nowhere is that more obvious than when you compare levels to the NJCL syllabi and leveling system for Kurchaman and for academics testing. Um, so how is that different? How is NJCL going to level students? And what do teachers need to think about as they're going from VJCL to NJCL?
Yeah, so for those students who, sorry, for those teachers and programs and students who are engaged at the NJCL level, just be aware that they are still going to go by years over the summer for NJCL, and that we are really separating from that pretty much entirely. I have told NJCL that I'm doing this, and I have their blessing essentially from the permissions of the Kurtaman chair and the academics chair for NJCL. But we are just going to go ahead and split to the extent that I took the NJCL novice syllabus and I broke it up over three levels: novice, novice plus, and intermediate. Essentially, what NJCL thinks you can do in 1 year, I more or less give you 3 years to do because the NJCL syllabus is huge and pretty much no one in Virginia is doing that much right now. So I wanted to sort of acknowledge that. And I do want to shout out to Jenny Luongo and Aspen Bombardo because the syllabus that you all are looking at right now, other than our lovely faces, but in theory, you have the document up and you're not staring at us. Um, that syllabus was really built by them. They're the ones who did the hyperlinks. They're the ones who kind of came up with the overarching structure. And then I just copied and pasted, tinkered, edited, jigsaw puzzled around to make it fit for what Virginia was doing. But they did a lot of the legwork to get it to look as nice and as helpful as it is right now. So shout out to NJCL for doing that.
Should our syllabi have a little lararium baked into them to Jenny and Aspen?
I do have a thank you, but I guess I can write Lorarium instead.
And to chime in here as someone who's been coaching intermediate curriculum at the national level, like I see a huge gap between where most Virginia programs end level one and what NJCL considers novice. I, and then that gap widens between where our schools end Latin 2 and what NJCL considers intermediate. It's just so much. I can't get through that much in a year. And we always end up teaching students some extra things over the summer. Um, so it's a huge expectation on the part of NJCL. And I think that scaling it back a little bit is a good thing for Virginia. Um, and it's not to criticize schools for going too slow or something.
I definitely go way slower than NJCL. You can criticize me all you want.
Yeah, both of us.
Yeah.
Um, and like what we're doing is good for our students. We can see that in our classrooms. We can see that in the fact that we've got 1,000+ students coming to our convention in November, every November. Um, I think that we're doing great things here in Virginia. And who knows? Maybe we're a trial balloon for NJCL to move something more like this.
Well, let's not get people's hopes up here.
I'll get my hopes up.
Okay, okay.
Um, so one of the things to think about here is that, like, as wonderful as this new system is, and I'm not just sucking up here,
Thank you,
but
thank you.
these are standardized levels, and nothing is going to be perfectly fitting to any one student or any one class. Um, how how can teachers deal with that difficulty as they're choosing a level for their kids?
I think that this system will be helpful for figuring out what even a level three test or a level three student is supposed to be. And if you've got any on the fence situations, I would just sit and talk it out with your kids and see what the best place is for them. My biggest recommendation, though, is to not put your students at a level where they know 100% of the material. We really do want to challenge kids and push them and give them an opportunity to grow and to do some study. So I really recommend that when you look at the syllabi, that you sort of place your kids where they know about 75 or 80% of the material on that syllabus. And then, or when you register them in October, they know about 75 to 80% of that material. And then obviously you'll cover a little bit over the course of the next month or so, but then there should be a space for them to push themselves, to study, to learn, to want to explore and get creative and get curious. And so I really recommend that you are honest about leveling your kids, about each individual kid, about all of your classrooms, all of those situations that might pop up, and see what the best fit is for them to have a comfortable, healthy, positive experience. And branch out towards ideally some fun grammar constructions.
Always the fun grammar constructions, especially
Only
the strange supine uses, you know?
my husband's mentioning this because the only reason we're together is because of strange supine uses. So maybe that should be a ask me about a convention. Ask me about strange supine uses and how I married a man over them, and we'll see how that goes.
Uh, and you better not criticize her decision.
To marry the man or the data supine?
The man.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, this like using the honor system, it's going to be good for the kids because um, students need to have someone to compete against who's approximately their level. Um, it's no fun to just to walk in and like know that you're far and above the smartest one in the room on a novice plus. Um, if you're taking the advanced plus and trying to go for Marie and O'Donnell, like yeah, be the be the smartest one in the room. But have someone to compete against. Have something to work towards and work on. Um, One of the great things about VJCL academics is finding ways to push yourself and get curious and learn some more things. Um, and then show what you know when you go to a convention.
Yeah.
So let's talk about other ways to show what we know in categories that are not language. Um, so we're going to be using these new monikers across the board for all of academics. If a student registers as intermediate plus in language tests, they will also be competing and receiving awards as intermediate plus on the non-language tests like Roman life and classical art and history. Um, and that was a complicated decision. So what went into that? And can you tell us approximately how many people you surveyed to come to your final answer?
Well, what went into it, I think, was every single walk you and I took for the better part of about 2 weeks. You wanted to talk about anything else, and this was the only thing we talked about. I think I asked almost every human being who could possibly be willing to listen to me, both my cats, former students, colleagues, friends, people who didn't take Latin, literally college roommates, whoever would listen to me, I asked them. Because at this point, I just wanted any perspective to challenge my own thinking. Um, but what we did land on, and by we, I do mean me, myself, and I, all three of us, me, myself, and I came together to to this decision. Um, that it was more fair and more simple to have students stay at novice, novice plus, intermediate, etc., rather than switching their category essentially by playing as year one, year two, year three. And the reasons for that, again, the simplicity really can't be overstated, especially for kids who are new to convention. They're like, I'm a novice plus here, but I'm a two. Like, what am I? And that's confusing. But also, this way, it sort of just keeps an even playing field that you are at this level all the way through. I also feel like it's a status quo decision. In previous years, I might have had a grammarian who was playing on level 5, and they might not have ever studied mythology once before in their life. And they're like, hey, I'm taking the myth test now. But it's not like they can just take the level 1 myth test because it's the first year they started on myth. They had other, 4 other years of opportunities. And so this way is just, yes, your grammar level is what sets it because that's essentially what we were doing before anyway. So I am hoping it works out. I also did some test runs. Yes, guys, that was a pun. Test runs.
Test runs on the tests.
Test runs on the tests, where I took last year's data and I pulled up everybody's school and score and etc. And then where it said like level one, two, three, etc. in that column on the spreadsheet, I switched it to novice, novice plus, intermediate, etc. Sort of guessing off of the county, the program, do I know your teacher there, all those different things. Some people I just really took a random guess. I'm not as familiar. And then I resorted and I compared to see would kids get a different top 10 score? Would people get taken out of the top 10, new people come in? And what I saw was actually remarkable consistency between the top 10s of last year's actual data versus in my test runs. Sometimes people are shuffled around. That definitely happened. I remember one of my kids moved from a third place to a fifth place, but it wasn't like a huge gap. It's not like they went from a third place to no award whatsoever. And also really the top three more or less stay very locked in to either the top three just stay the same or within the top five. So I don't think it's going to majorly impact sweepstakes points. To me, that's comforting. I have a lot of kids who are really competitive, and I don't want to make a decision that's going to super impact and all of a sudden, like, oh my God, Miss Ghosheh, now, something's going to change and I'm not going to get a top 10. I want this to be the most fair, the most equitable, the most accessible possible situation, the most simple situation for everybody, for every school, for every program. And I'm really hoping that this system is going to allow that to be a vehicle to make that happen. It's not going to be perfect. I don't think that I'm going to hit the nail on the head the first run. I can almost guarantee you I won't because of how much I've tinkered with it. I bet I passed the best possible option on like tinker variation number three. But I'm really hoping that this will be a good move in the right direction. That said, I did ask you to still put the year of Latin next to your students' names so that we can rerun the data later. It's going to be my winter break project and see if it did make a difference having them be categorized as novice plus for a history test or like level two for a history test. Um, because I really do want to see that data since this is sort of a major choice.
Knowing that students who were getting in the top 10 before will probably still be getting in the top 10, and this new system is really comforting to me because I feel like one of the greatest reasons for coming to VJCL is for those recognitions that students can get. It's really encouraging, and I always say nothing breeds success more than success. And so I like to see my students getting a placement for something they've worked hard on. Um,
I do want to follow up though. I also made sure that schools from all over Virginia were still getting represented in those top tens. It wasn't just one or two schools winning across the board, and that was really showing in this system, and I really am hoping that that will continue.
that's really important too. Spreading the wealth
Spreading the
among
wealth.
all the schools who attend.
Everybody gets a ribbon.
You get a ribbon. You get a ribbon. Um, but to put on my creative arts chair hat for a moment, um, the simplicity extends beyond just the academics realm. Um, in creative arts, we've got three contests that are based on Latin passages and reading ability. That's dramatic interpretation, Latin oratory, and sight Latin reading. Um, and those contests, I can say, are also going to use these same new leveling names. Um, so if you are taking a grammar test as a novice plus, then you are also going to be competing in Latin oratory as a novice plus. And so that goes across the board into creative arts. The only other system that VJCL uses for giving out awards and levels of competition is grade level. For those things in which the age of a student matters more than their exposure to Latin in class. So graphic arts will still use grade levels, and creative arts contests like costume contests or storytelling or English oratory will still use grade levels as the leveling system. Um, so let me get back out of the way and back to academics, which is really what we're all here for, and the grammar jokes,
I came for the Pellegrino footnotes personally.
especially the supines. But academics co-chair, most excellency you are. What are some other changes coming down the pike in the academics realm?
Yeah, I've got a couple other ones I'm really excited about that I promise are not just Pellegrino footnotes, despite my love of them. One that I'm really pumped about is that we're going to introduce a theme section on the history test this year. Uh, it's going to be a very special secret section, but it will be pre-released, I think, as of next week. I was just texting the history test writer about it. I think we're about to be confirmed, but I don't want to announce it on video. Not this video, at least. Um, but it's gonna be really fun. It's gonna be 15 out of the 65 questions, and we're gonna pre-release this theme. I promise you it won't be like people whose names start with R. It's gonna be slightly more specific than that. But I'll give you a place for to start learning because history I know is one of the more daunting ones. And often kids come in without really any basic knowledge of history. And so it's really good to have a place to start when the kids are like, I want to learn Roman history. And you're like, great, there's 1,200 years and like 3,000 battles. That's a lot. I mean, I know there aren't 3,000 battles, but some days it feels like it. And sometimes it feels like even more Praetorian prefects, although I know that's not math.
I would not be
Um,
surprised.
no, okay. I swear there's less than 3,000 Praetorian prefects, just not in my head. Um, and so this will be a place that will be an accessible starting point for you to give your kids. The second really big change that I'm excited about is classical art is getting a syllabus. I love the classical art test. I am a big art nerd. Um, I could talk about a statue pretty much all day to my students' horror. But most kids who other I guess other than mine who are horrified by my statue ramblings, don't learn classical art in class. And I understand that everybody's just like, I don't even know where to start. Tell me where to start. And so I'm hoping that the syllabus will give a nice grounding for what will be on the classical art test. And so currently the classical art syllabus looks like the unswept floor mosaic. It is just a bunch of word vomit and statues unchronologically, that's the word, placed haphazardly, like my syllables in that sentence. But I'm about to sweep that floor up and it's going to look pretty in roughly the next week.
And I think that given the size of this other change that we're talking about with the levels, I think we can forgive you for having an unswept floor for the moment on classical art.
Well, I do like the unswept floor mosaic, so I could leave it that way.
Maybe
Just
we
it would
should
be
leave it.
unusable.
Fish bones,
Yeah, exactly.
nice.
Exactly.
I love it. Um, well, that's all for our academics ramblings for tonight. Hopefully, we don't start a whole podcast series on what's new in academics on VJCL. We'll have some consistency going forward.
I don't know if I could take another change. It's been too much for my rambling soul.
It's been too much for my walks,
It's been too much for his walks, that's for sure.
taken over by academics discussions.
I mean, that said, I am really proud of the tests that have come out the past couple of years, and I'm really happy that a change is being made. And I'm excited to hear your all's feedback. And if you hate the system, if you love the system, I want to hear what you guys have to say about it because I wanted to be an academics chair since I was like a little kid sitting in the little stadium being like, oh, she's cool. I want to be her when I grow up. And now I get to be her. Did not know how much work it was going to be ahead of time. Should have come up with a warning sign. But I do want to be the best academics chair I can be in creating the most accessible, fun, equitable situation I can. So give me all the feedback. And I think on that note, we'll see you in November.